Winter came early that year. The old ranchers would later say they had never seen snow like it. It swept down from the mountains weeks before it should have arrived, swallowing trails, burying fences, and turning the vast wilderness of the into a silent white ocean. The family watched the storm from the windows of their farmhouse with growing fear. Their crops had failed during the summer drought. Their debts had, every week, brought another bill they could not pay. By November, they had only one choice left. They would abandon the farm and travel north to stay with distant relatives in a larger settlement. Everyone in the house worried about the journey. Everyone except, at 18 years old, had spent most of her life worrying about everyone else. She rose before dawn each morning to light the stove. She cooked meals from whatever scraps remained in the pantry. She washed clothes until her hands cracked from cold water. She mended torn coats late into the night while the rest of the family slept. No one asked her to work so hard. No one thanked her for it either. Her mother acted as if such sacrifices were expected, had never hidden her disappointment in her eldest daughter. Whenever crossed a room with her slight limp, her mother's expression tightened. The injury had happened years earlier after a horse threw her against a fence. The leg healed poorly. Since then, walked more slowly than other girls. To her mother, that single flaw outweighed every good thing about her. "You would have had a husband by now if you looked normal," often said. Never answered. She had learned long ago that silence hurt less than arguments. Her father was no better. Charles wasn't cruel. He was simply weak. Whenever criticized, he stared at the floor and pretended not to hear. The only person who received affection in the household was younger sister, Clara. Clara was beautiful. She had golden hair, bright eyes, and a talent for attracting attention wherever she went. Adored her. Everything lacked seemed to exist in abundance within her younger sister. As the days grew colder, preparations for the journey intensified. The family sold livestock. Furniture disappeared from the house. Supplies were loaded into a wagon. Worked harder than anyone. Yet each evening, she overheard conversations that made her feel less welcome. "We don't have enough food," whispered one night. "We'll manage," Charles replied. "Will we?" she snapped. "4 people are expensive enough." Stood outside the kitchen doorway, holding a basket of laundry. She heard every word. Her mother continued, "If we must choose who survives this winter, we cannot afford dead weight." The words struck harder than any slap. Dead weight was talking about her. Quietly walked away before they noticed her listening. That night she cried into her pillow. Not because she was surprised, because a small part of her had still hoped she was wrong. The journey began 3 days later. Snow covered the landscape in every direction. The wagon creaked beneath its heavy load. Cold winds howled across the plains. For the first 2 days, they made slow but steady progress. On the 3rd day, conditions worsened. The snow deepened. The horses struggled. Food supplies dwindled than expected. Tension filled the wagon. Complained constantly. Charles grew quieter with each passing mile. Clara spent most of her time wrapped in blankets, avoiding any responsibility. Only walked beside the wagon whenever the horses needed relief. By the 5th day, the storm became dangerous. Dark clouds swallowed the sky. Snow blew sideways across the trail. Visibility shrank to only a few yards. The family stopped near a cluster of pine trees to make camp before nightfall. The wind screamed through the forest. Everyone moved quickly. Charles unharnessed the horses, gathered blankets. Clara remained inside the wagon, helped with everything. Just as she finished unloading supplies, her mother pointed toward the woods. "We need more firewood." Looked toward the storm. The snow was growing. "I can go," Charles offered weakly. Shook her head. "You need to stay with the horses." Then she turned toward. "You go." Without complaint, picked up an axe. Years of obedience had become second nature. She limped into the forest while snow gathered on her coat. The storm intensified. Branches groaned beneath the weight of ice. The forest grew darker. Still gathered armful after armful of wood. By the time she returned, nearly an hour had passed. The bundle in her arms was heavy. Her fingers were numb. Her cheeks burned from the cold. But when she reached the clearing, she stopped. The wagon was gone. The horses were gone. The camp was gone. For a moment, she simply stood there, unable to understand what she was seeing. Or rather, what she wasn't seeing. The clearing was empty. Only deep wagon tracks remained in the snow. "No," she whispered. The wood slipped from her hands. "No." She stumbled forward. Her heart pounded wildly. They wouldn't. But deep inside, she already knew. The truth was waiting for her. The truth she had spent years refusing to believe. They had left her. Not by accident. Not because they were lost. Not because they planned to return. They had abandoned her. A violent gust of wind swept across the clearing. Snow erased part of the wagon trail before her eyes. Began running, or as close to running as her injured leg allowed. She followed the tracks through the storm. "Father!" Her voice disappeared into the wind. "Clara!" Nothing answered. She kept moving. The snow reached her knees. Her lungs burned. Tears froze against her skin. Again and again, she called their names. Again and again, the wilderness answered with silence. Hours passed. The storm grew stronger. The wagon tracks vanished beneath fresh snow. Darkness crept across the mountains. At last, could go no farther. She collapsed beneath a towering pine tree. Exhaustion consumed her. The cold seeped into her bones. Her body trembled uncontrollably. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared into the white darkness. For the first time in her life, she truly understood. Her family had never loved her. Not enough to stay. Not enough to fight for her. Not enough to choose her. A sob escaped her lips. Then another. Soon she was crying openly. Not because she feared death, but because she realized she would die believing she was unwanted. Snow settled across her shoulders. Her eyelids grew heavy. The forest blurred. The world became distant. Then she heard something. A sound. Faint. Rhythmic. Hoofbeats. Forced her eyes open. Through the swirling snow, she saw a dark figure on horseback. At first, she thought she was imagining it. A dream created by a dying mind. But the rider grew closer. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Wrapped in heavy winter furs. The horse pushed through the drifts with determination. The stranger spotted her immediately. Within moments, he dismounted beside her. Could barely focus. She saw strong hands. Dark eyes. Snow clinging to long black hair. The face of an Apache warrior. His expression changed when he realized how young she was. For a brief moment, sorrow crossed his features. A sorrow that seemed older than the storm itself. Then he removed a thick fur blanket and wrapped it around her trembling body. Tried to speak. The words never came. The warrior gently lifted her into his arms. The last thing she remembered was the steady beat of his heart beneath layers of fur and leather. Then darkness claimed her. Far above them, snow continued to fall across the silent mountains. And somewhere beyond the storm, destiny was carrying toward the family she had never known she was meant to find, expected to wake in heaven. Or perhaps nowhere at all. Instead, she woke to warmth. Real warmth. The kind she had not felt in days. A fire crackled nearby. The scent of burning cedar drifted through the air. Soft blankets covered her body. For several moments, she simply stared upward at the wooden beams overhead. She was alive. The realization felt impossible. Slowly, she turned her head. The room around her was unlike anything she had ever seen. Animal hides covered portions of the walls. Beautiful woven blankets displayed intricate patterns of red, black, and white. A small fire glowed in the center of the lodge. Near the entrance sat 3 women quietly sewing while speaking in a language did not understand. Fear tightened her chest. Then one of the women noticed she was awake. A gentle smile appeared on the woman's face. She said something softly. Moments later, footsteps approached. The tall Apache warrior entered the lodge. Snow dusted his fur-lined shoulders. His dark eyes immediately found hers. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then he knelt beside her. "You are safe." His English was careful but clear. Stared at him. "You saved me." The warrior. "You were freezing." Memory flooded back. The storm. The wagon. The empty clearing. Her family. Pain returned with such force that tears immediately filled her eyes. The warrior noticed. Yet he did not ask questions. Perhaps he recognized the look of grief. Perhaps he carried some of his own. "My name is," he said quietly. He once, then rose to leave. Before exiting, he paused. "You rest now." The lodge became silent again. For the first time since her abandonment, felt something strange. Not happiness. Not comfort. Safety. Days passed. Then weeks. Outside, winter tightened its grip upon the mountains. Snow-buried trails beneath towering drifts. The world became white and silent. Slowly recovered. The frostbite in her hands healed. Strength returned to her body. The people of the village cared for her without expecting anything in return. No one complained when she needed help walking. No one looked annoyed when she moved slowly. No one called her a burden. At first, she found this almost suspicious. Kindness had always come with conditions in her experience. But these people asked for nothing. One morning, an elderly woman handed a bowl of stew and smiled. Another day, a young hunter repaired a broken chair she had been using. Children frequently brought her small gifts. Pretty feathers. Tiny carvings. Each act confused her more than the last. Why were strangers treating her better than her own family ever had? The answer arrived in the form of a little girl. Her name was Little Sparrow. She was 9 years old. Small and energetic. Curious about absolutely everything. The first time she met, she simply marched into the lodge and sat beside her. Then she stared. And stared. And stared. Finally laughed. "What?" Little Sparrow pointed. "Your eyes." "My eyes." The girl seriously. "They look like winter clouds." Blinked. No one had ever complimented her eyes before. The child continued. "They are pretty." Then she smiled. From that moment onward, Little Sparrow attached herself to like a shadow. She followed her everywhere, asked endless questions, shared stories, collected flowers whenever spring seemed even remotely possible. Each day their friendship deepened. One evening, asked about the girl's parents. Little Sparrow lowered her eyes. They went to the sky world. Immediately understood. The child was an orphan. Something inside her heart tightened. Perhaps because she knew what it felt like to be unwanted. After that conversation, she became even more protective of the girl. At night, she told stories beside the fire. Little Sparrow often fell asleep leaning against her shoulder. No one objected. In fact, the villagers seemed pleased. Especially Elder Grey Eagle. The leader of the community was nearly 60 years old. His hair contained more silver than black. Wisdom seemed etched into every line of his face. One afternoon, he watched teaching Little Sparrow how to read simple English words. The old man smiled. "You have a good heart." Looked away. "I don't know about that." Grey Eagle chuckled. "The people with the best hearts are usually the ones who doubt it." Meanwhile, remained a mystery. He was respected by everyone. Children admired him. Warriors listened to him. Elders trusted him. Yet he spent much of his time alone. Whenever thanked him for saving her, he simply changed the subject. He never sought attention, never boasted, never demanded gratitude. Instead, he expressed kindness through actions. One morning, discovered a beautifully carved walking stick outside her lodge. The polished wood fit perfectly in her hand. Its top was decorated with a soaring eagle. She immediately knew who had made it. Later that day, she found repairing a sled near the edge of the village. "You made this?" He glanced at the walking stick. "Yes, it's beautiful." His expression softened slightly. "It will help your leg." Smiled. "Thank you." For a moment, neither spoke. Then returned to his work. Yet noticed something. The silence between them no longer felt awkward. It felt comfortable, like sitting beside a fire during a snowstorm. As winter continued, she gradually learned his story. Years earlier, disease had swept through the mountains. Had lost both his wife and infant daughter within the same month. The grief nearly destroyed him. Since then, he had buried much of himself behind silence. When heard the story, her heart ached for him. For the first time, she understood the sadness she sometimes glimpsed in his eyes. It was not weakness. It was loss. And loss recognized loss. Their friendship deepened. Neither rushed it. Neither spoke of feelings. Yet everyone else seemed to notice. Especially Little Sparrow. The child constantly found excuses to place them together. "Help. Needs help. Sit here. Sit there." The villagers found this endlessly amusing. Only Little Sparrow pretended she was being subtle. Then disaster struck. A storm even worse than the first descended upon the mountains. Snow fell for 2 straight days. The village nearly vanished beneath it. Visibility disappeared. Travel became impossible. Everyone remained close to their lodges. On the 3rd morning, panic spread. Little Sparrow was missing. She had wandered away before sunrise searching for a trapped rabbit she had seen the previous day. Search parties immediately formed. Led them. Joined despite objections. The storm was brutal. Snow whipped against her face. Her injured leg burned with every step. Still she searched. Hour after hours. Then, near a frozen ravine, she heard crying. "Little sparrow!" The child sat, huddled beneath a fallen tree. Terrified, freezing, alive, rushed toward her. The girl burst into tears. "I couldn't find my way back." "It's all right," whispered. "I'm here now." The storm intensified. Unable to move quickly, wrapped the child in her coat and sheltered her against the fallen tree. The cold became unbearable. Minutes felt like hours. Eventually, voices echoed through the snow. The search party arrived. Relief flooded his face when he saw them. A rare emotion, raw and visible. He immediately lifted little Sparrow into his arms. Then his gaze shifted toward. She was trembling violently. Her lips had turned pale. Without hesitation, he wrapped his own fur cloak around her shoulders. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Back in the village, celebrations lasted long into the evening. The child had been saved. Everyone gathered inside the largest lodge. Laughter filled the air. Food was shared. Stories were told. Then little Sparrow stood. She looked around the crowded room. Finally, her eyes found. The little girl walked forward. Silence gradually spread through the gathering. Little Sparrow stopped directly in front of her, then wrapped her arms around his waist. "I have something to say." Everyone waited. The child looked up. Her eyes shone with tears. "You found me when everyone was afraid." Smiled softly. "You would have done the same for me." Little Sparrow shook her head. "No." The girl's voice cracked. Then she whispered the words that changed everything. "You are the closest thing I have to a mother." The entire lodge fell silent. Felt her breath catch. Little Sparrow heard tighter. And for the first time in her life, cried because she felt loved. Spring arrived slowly in the mountains. The endless snow that had ruled the world for months finally began to surrender. Ice dripped from pine branches. Frozen streams awakened beneath blankets of white. Wildflowers pushed through patches of melting snow, as if determined to prove that winter could not last forever. For spring brought something she had never expected. Peace. Real peace. Not the fragile kind that disappeared whenever someone raised their voice. Not the temporary kind that depended upon pleasing others. This peace lived inside her. It came from waking each morning surrounded by people who genuinely cared whether she smiled. It came from hearing little Sparrow's laughter outside her lodge. It came from watching the Apache community work together as one family. And though she rarely admitted it even to herself, it came from. The warrior remained as quiet as ever. Yet his presence had become a constant part of her life. Some mornings, she found fresh firewood stacked outside her lodge. Other times, she discovered berries or flowers carefully placed beside her door. No notes. No explanations. She always knew who had left them. One evening, she sat beside a stream, watching the last pieces of ice drift away. Joined her. Neither spoke for several minutes. The silence between them felt comfortable. Natural. Finally smiled. "You know, most people usually talk when they spend time together." A faint smile touched his lips. "Most people are afraid of silence. And you're not." "No." He picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water. "Silence often tells the truth." Looked at him. His profile glowed beneath the golden light of sunset. For a brief moment, she wondered what her life might have become if the storm had never happened. If her family had never abandoned her. Then she realized something surprising. She no longer wished to know, because that path would never have led her here. The peaceful evening was interrupted several days later. Riders appeared at the edge of the village. Settlers. Visitors rarely came this deep into the mountains. The arrival immediately attracted attention. Stood beside Little Sparrow as several warriors approached the newcomers. Then her heart stopped. She recognized the wagon, recognized the horses, recognized the people climbing down. Her family. Charles. Clara. For a moment, she could not breathe. Months had passed since they abandoned her. Months. Yet seeing them again reopened wounds she believed had healed. Little Sparrow noticed her expression. The child immediately took her hand. What's wrong? Swallowed hard. My family. The girl's eyes widened. Those 2 words alone were enough. The visitors were escorted into the village. Spotted first. To everyone's surprise, tears immediately appeared in her eyes. She rushed forward, arms open, voice trembling. The performance would have been convincing if had not known her mother her entire life. Embraced her, or tried to. Stepped back. A brief flicker of irritation crossed her mother's face before disappearing beneath another mask of concern. Oh, thank heaven you're alive. Charles quickly. We searched for weeks. Stared at him. The lie hung in the air. Heavy and obvious. She remembered the empty clearing. The wagon tracks. The storm. The truth. No amount of pretending could erase it. Clara smiled awkwardly. We thought we'd lost you forever. Remained silent. Around them, members of the Apache community watched carefully. Especially. His expression revealed nothing, yet knew he was paying attention. Quickly explained why they had come. According to her story, abandoning had been a terrible accident. The storm had separated them. The wagon had become lost. Months of searching had followed. The tale sounded convincing, until looked into her mother's eyes. Then she saw it. Greed. Nothing more. The truth emerged later that evening. One of the settlers accidentally revealed it during conversation. A lawyer in a nearby town had recently discovered that late grandmother had owned valuable land. Land rich with silver deposits. The inheritance belonged entirely to. Suddenly, everything made sense. They had not come because they loved her. They had come because they wanted something. The realization hurt less than she expected. Perhaps because she had already grieved the loss of her family long ago. That night visited privately. Her smile vanished the moment they were alone. You will come with us. It wasn't a request. Calmly shook her head. No. Blinked. What? I'm not leaving. The older woman's expression darkened. Don't be foolish. Met her gaze. For the first time in her life, she refused to look away. You left me to die. It was necessary. The words slipped out before could stop them. Silence filled the room. Even realized her mistake. Felt something inside her finally break free. Not her heart. Her fear. Years of fear. Years of obedience. Years of believing she deserved less than everyone else. They all vanished. You chose who mattered, said quietly. And it wasn't me. The next morning, the entire village gathered. Word of the conflict had spread. Insisted belonged with her family. Stood before everyone. For the first time, she told the truth. She spoke of years of neglect, years of insults, years of being treated like a burden. She spoke about the day she returned with firewood and found herself abandoned in a snowstorm. Many listeners lowered their eyes. Others looked openly shocked. Even Charles could not deny it. When finished speaking, silence filled the village. Then Elder Grey Eagle stepped forward. The old leader looked at, then at. Finally he spoke. Family is not created by blood alone. His voice carried across the gathering. Family is created by love, sacrifice, and loyalty. The villager's face reddened. Desperate, she turned toward the Apache people. They are not her people. The insult echoed through the crowd. Before could respond, stepped forward. His calm presence immediately silenced everyone. He looked directly at, then spoke. Is not property. The words were simple, yet powerful. She belongs to herself. Opened her mouth. Continued. She will choose where she wishes to live. For the first time, had no answer. Little Sparrow suddenly ran forward. Tears streamed down her face. She wrapped both arms around. Please don't leave. The child's voice cracked. Please. Looked down at her. Then around the village. At the people who had fed her. Protected her. Accepted her. Loved her. This was home. These were her people. Slowly she smiled. I'm not going anywhere. Little Sparrow burst into tears of relief. Laughter followed. The tension finally broke. Realized she had lost. For once, manipulation would not save her. The settlers departed the next day. Her family left with them. No dramatic farewell followed. No apologies. No redemption. Just distance. And found she was perfectly content with that. Several weeks later, spring fully arrived. Wildflowers painted the mountains with. Birdsong replaced winter winds. One evening, asked to walk with him. They followed a trail overlooking the valley. Golden sunlight bathed the landscape. For a long time, neither spoke. Then stopped. His expression seemed unusually nervous. Had never seen that before. Finally, he looked at her. When I found you in the snow, I thought I was a stranger. She listened quietly. I was wrong. The warrior's voice softened. You brought life back into places inside me that I believed were gone forever. Emotion tightens throat. Stepped closer. I loved my wife. I know. I will always her memory. I know. His eyes met hers. But my heart chose you. Tears filled eyes. Because her heart had chosen him long ago. She smiled through those tears. I love you too. For a moment, neither moved. Then gently took her hand. And beneath the warm spring sky, the future began. A month later, the village gathered for a celebration. Flowers decorated the clearing. Children laughed. Music echoed through the mountains. Little Sparrow proudly placed wildflowers in his hair. The girl looked than anyone. As stood beside, she realized something remarkable. The greatest gift of her life had come disguised as tragedy. Being abandoned had led her here. To this moment. To this family. To this love. Years later, people would tell stories about the winter when a young woman was left to die in the snow. But always remembered it differently. Because that winter had not been the end of her story. It had been the beginning. As evening settled over the mountains, She stood between and little sparrow, while gentle snowflakes drifted through the air. The child held one of her hands, held the other, and surrounded by the family she had chosen, and who had chosen her, finally understood a truth that had taken 18 years to learn. The people who abandoned her had shared her blood, but the people who saved her had given her a home. And the Apache warrior who carried her out of the storm had given her something even greater. A family.